I'm Suzanne Sibilla. I'm the owner of Sibilla and Associates, which is the premier leadership and employee development company. Overcome obstacles, reframe your reality, love life, and have growth goals. Change and shift your energy. Pivot.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Suzanne Sibilla, your host of Pivot Now, where we bring on interesting, exciting, and dynamic guests who will share with us their tips, tricks, and life and business hacks to help you pivot in your life. I am so excited to bring on this guest on our show. She is absolutely amazing, and you've got to watch her show all the way to the end because she's going to bring us so many valuable tips. So let me tell you a little bit about her. I just love this guest. She is, again, so amazing. So she is a radical resiliency coach, and she is a keynote speaker, TEDx speaker. She's written 2 books that are coming out in a couple of months. Absolutely amazing. She also has a background as an executive in a company that she's worked at for over 20 years. And now she does a lot of coaching. She actually also was in a severe accident, a snowboard accident that left her with her brain, having to refunction in terms of her her neurotransmitters, if you will, in terms of her brain. And so she's done a lot of that in terms of her mental fitness and emotional fitness, and talks a lot about resiliency. So welcome to our show, Rachel Rose. Welcome. Rachel, woo!
Thank you. Thank you.
I was stuck on there when I was saying about your brain. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are probably going, gosh, what's wrong with her brain, right?
Contagious.
Oh my gosh. It's so great to have you on the show. I just love you so much. And
I love you too.
Fabulous.
I love you, Suzanne.
So tell us a little bit more, because I didn't really get into the accident that happened and what happened with that with regards to the snowboard accident, and what did you have to do to get to where you are now?
Okay, so I never went on a snowboard or skis or anything in my whole life. It was something new. I wanted to try. And ultimately, I'm very stubborn with myself, like many people out there probably. And I went down this mountain continuously for 5 days. And my goal was, to get down this hill, if it was the last thing I did, but not, I didn't mean it literally. And I came back from the week, and 4 days in was back at my job as a VP, taking care of my 3 kids. And I literally one day didn't know how I got downtown. And then, I had no idea. I had a helmet on. I knew I was going to fall a million times. And by the time I got to the emergency room, which was only because my mom was, telling me that I needed to go, I grabbed my youngest of 3 kids, and they said, we're going to do a CAT scan. We'll have the results in 45 minutes. And literally 45 seconds later, a doctor, threw open the door. He looked at my son. He said, find him a ride home and kiss him goodbye.
Oh my God.
That you have a subdural hematoma. You're bleeding from front to back, and we can't save you. Find whoever's the executor of your will, and we have an ambulance downstairs to take you to the trauma center.
Oh my gosh.
So literally, and 3 days later, I heard the beeping in the ICU, and that was the only reason I knew I was still alive. So.
Wow, Rachel, that just, oh my God.
Yes.
I can't even imagine. So then what happened after that? I mean, how did you go from that place of being in the ICU
So
so then what happened? I mean, tell us what happened after that.
so basically, my trainer had reached out, my boxing trainer, and I don't even know how he reached out because I didn't have a phone. I couldn't go on a phone or communicate, but he got a message to me about a movie called Concussion and encouraged me to watch it. And at that point, I had always wished and dreamed of like a few minutes with nothing to do. And now I had all this time and I couldn't do anything. I literally had to relearn everything. So I couldn't listen to music or go on the phone or watch a movie or all the things you would do if you had free time that you don't have, read a book. And in the movie, it was a true story about 12 football players who had sustained the same injury as I did, and they all committed suicide. And so that was all I could take away from it, was that you don't want to kill yourself, but you need to stop the insanity. Your brain is literally in fight or flight mode when you sustain this accident that I had. And the neurological doctors were really pushing me to do crazy things that would drive a sane person crazy. And I couldn't do it. And I was so afraid of doing what these football players had done, which was follow, the typical protocol and take the medicine and do these exercises. So when I refused, they refused to work with me and said, 84% of people that sustain this brain injury end up committing suicide in an assisted living home. And basically said, they literally told me that unless I take the meds and reset my brains and my brain and do what they were advising, that I wouldn't be able to live independently.
Oh my.
But I'm stubborn. So luckily I didn't listen to them. And the only thing I could do at that time was look at pictures. And so I went back to my home and I started making collages. That was literally the only thing I could do. And and then I was boxing. I told myself that the hand-eye coordination could help me in some way. And I had a mini stroke on the way home one day from boxing. And I was on the side of the road and I called my dad and I said, Dad, I can't smile. I think my face fell asleep. And he said, you're having a stroke. So I had been given a number of a neurological chiropractor. And an hour and a half later, on the side of the road, he told me he could help me. And I needed to come to see him and commit to every day for the next 18 months or whatever it was. But he told me for sure he could help me. And so that was the beginning of this amazing journey of resiliency.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. That's such a powerful story. I mean, I'm speechless. I mean, you're a walking, breathing miracle. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
So then now I know you talk about radical resiliency. So tell us about that. I mean, what you went through is an amazing testament to your level of resiliency. And so share with us what those tips are.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, the resiliency comes after, right? Definitely. It wasn't like I just bounced back. But my neurologist and I were recently on a show and they asked my neurologist, how is it that Rachel survived and has come and achieved what she has after suffering this injury that most, are not able to even live through? And what blew my mind, Suzanne, was my neurologist said, it was 100% mindset. And
Wow.
literally. And that's what really blew my mind. Forgive the
Uh-huh.
pun. But because I feel like I was given the gift of rose-colored glasses. I definitely have been able to approach most things in my life at looking at the positive aspects of them, but I never realized the impact of mindset on everything, including our health. I mean,
Mm.
literally, because it would have been so easy to be able to say, I can't do anything. I mean, I literally have videos of someone teaching me how to go on my phone again, and
Oh my
how
gosh.
to schedule on a calendar, and
Oh.
how to pay bills. I mean, I had 24-hour 24/7, support. And so that's when I realized the power and the impact that I could share with others, inspiring hope and
Mm.
not and deciding, because the doctors literally said you're not going to make it. You're going to die. They told me this in front of my son.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so, this is such a big message for everyone, is that, you get to decide. Nobody
Mm.
else can decide for you what the outcome is. And you can't allow other people to put, this is the one thing that I can explain it best. And if you can put yourself in this situation, if you haven't ever been in this situation, imagine if a doctor or anyone said to you, was delivering your diagnosis, right, of what's going on with your health or your life or whatever. And instead of saying, I'm so sorry to tell you this, which they didn't even say, but your test came back and this is what you have, and this is the best case scenario, or you have stage whatever. What if that doctor delivered the same diagnosis, but gave you the prognosis and said, listen, it's not common, but if you want to get through this, if you want to overcome this, you can fight this. Imagine
Mm.
how much differently somebody would leave that office and go on with their life. Instead of packing up their stuff and saying goodbye to everybody, they'd be going back and thinking, how can I get through this? I got to get through this, which is what the 5 steps of radical resiliency, how it came about, obviously in hindsight. And I know now more than ever that it is proven, because in hindsight, it was created. And I recently came upon another, life, whatever you want to call it. And it is the only way that I got through it. And
Wow. So we're going to hear more about it after a commercial break. We'll hear more about the 5 steps to radical resiliency with Rachel Rose right after our commercial.
Hi, I'm Kelly Melissa Reinhart, host of Make Mental Health Matter. Join me on Mondays at 11 a.m. and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on the Achieve TV network right here on E360 TV.
Welcome back to Pivot Now. I'm Suzanne Sabilla, and we've got our fabulous guest here, Rachel Rose, who's been talking to us about the accident that she endured and the traumatic brain injury that she endured, and how the whole part of having mental fitness and a positive mindset really has helped her to shift her whole physical being and her whole mental being. And so we're talking about the 5 steps to radical resiliency. So tell us a little bit more. What are those 5 steps, Rachel?
First, I think that it's very common. Well, I want to say first is that trauma or whatever our situation or circumstance, you don't have to suffer a near death experience to use the 5 steps to radical resiliency. And that's what I've also learned in coaching others, is that trauma to one person could be a conversation. It could be, a stage fright. I mean, it can be different things to different people. So
Mm.
I really want to make that clear and stress that radical resiliency is about going through the process with the 5 steps in any situation, right? So
Mhm.
the first step is it's very simple when we're in something that's presented to us that's not comfortable or positive or scary or overwhelming, to be the victim, right? To have
Mm. Yes.
and what I've learned is that you have to be in that place. You have to acknowledge where you are, have the pity party, and and maybe blame, justify, and excuse what's happening to you and why me. And because
Mm.
it's very common, I know for myself, was I was beating myself up, right? The judge we talk about
Uh-huh.
in our positive intelligence, I was judging myself like, oh, why did you do that? And, but I had to get to the place where I was angry at, the snowboard boyfriend and, and not taking a lesson. And why was I so stubborn? And you have to first, imagine after a natural disaster, nobody goes in to help and just starts rebuilding things, right? Rebuilding
Mm.
buildings. And first they have to come in and they have to assess, what happened
Mhm.
and how traumatic it was, or, overwhelming it is. So I think that is the first one. Is I know it's having self-compassion and allowing yourself to be in that place.
I think that's an excellent point, because I think for a lot of people, I know for myself included, a lot of times it's like, oh, let's just go over, like, let's just get over it and let's just move on, right? Let's move forward. But when we end up doing that, we actually, it makes it a lot harder, because we haven't grieved or haven't really, been in that moment of really, like you said, kind of like acknowledging the grief, acknowledging the pain. And when we end up going like, okay, we'll just go move forward through it and let's just like forget about ignore it, ignore the problem, it actually festers and becomes larger, right?
It's
So I
so
think that's
true.
a really good point that you made, is being able to be in that grieving space, if you will,
Mhm.
in that victim space, not for so long, but just to be able to realize what the pain is.
Exactly. And if you ever read the book Going on a Bear Hunt, and if you didn't, I definitely recommend it. It's a children's book, but
Uh-huh.
I get goosebumps listening to what you're saying, because in Going on a Bear Hunt, they want to catch a bear. They want to catch a big one. And they come upon all these obstacles along the way. And at each obstacle, they go through, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around
Mm,
it, have to go through it, right? and
mm,
and what you're, to support in what you're saying, it's so true, because what happens is when we don't acknowledge, when we don't be and accept what's happening and where we're at, and feel the pain and allow it to be okay and have compassion, when we ignore it, because I've lived a long time being like, okay, I don't have time for this. Like, I need to
uh-huh.
move on, right?
Exactly.
And
Yep.
what ends up happening is when we don't deal with the trauma, when we don't go through the steps of healing and resiliency, the radical resiliency, when we don't go through each step, it doesn't go away. And
Mm,
ultimately what happens is any trauma that's not dealt with, it starts to not only affect us in our brain and in our thoughts and in what we do, but it affects us in our health, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that
So
is
true.
what will take us down physically, literally,
Mm-hmm.
because any undealt trauma it's living inside of there until
Yes.
we
So
face it.
true. Yeah, it's like the whole book, The Body Knows the Score, right? It's like we hold trauma in our body. And so if we haven't resolved that trauma or healed through the trauma, it'll come out in other ways, right?
Yes.
So very good point. So then
Yes.
what's the second step in terms of radical resiliency?
Is deciding, how do you want this story to go? And it's the outcome, right? And
Mm,
if we want a positive outcome, we need to have a positive outlook. And so I went through so many months, because between the time that I had the accident initially and the time that I found this neurological chiropractor, there was months that I was home and going through this process of, I would do anything to go back. I would do anything to be normal again. I would do anything to
mm,
be who I was. But what's amazing about going through these steps of acknowledgement, and then the next step of deciding is at the end of the 5 steps, at the end, you're a different person. And
mm,
now this is where the resiliency takes you to another level, so that the next time that something happens to you, number one, it may not even affect you in the same way, right? Because the good part is I kept wanting to go back to who I was, but
mm-hmm.
in the end, it's like, that's what's that quote about, going through the storm, and at the end of the storm, once you come through it, you're a different person. That's the whole point of the storm. Like,
Right.
you are so much more confident and so much more capable to approach life situations, work situations, any situation, after you go through and become who you're meant to be and who you need to be in the situation. So, and that is the gifts of going through it, instead of numbing the pain and going on our phone or having a drink or
Mm.
a smoke or a hot fudge sundae or whatever it is that we do to
Uh-huh.
avoid
Mhm.
going through and actually feeling what we need to feel to get to the
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times it's our challenges that really make us who we are, right? And a lot of times we can't see looking forward, but it's always when we look back on it, we're like, oh, wow, okay, now I understand why that happened the way that happened, right?
so much.
And so, yeah, I really truly believe that a lot of times things happen. Many times we don't understand why, but they do happen for a reason.
Oh,
And we can look back on those situations or events and see, okay, what is the gift in this? What is the opportunity in this?
I love
I
it.
love
I
that.
love
Yeah,
it. I heard something amazing. Can I share? And I
sure.
and I can't remember who said it, but it's amazing. Into what you're saying right now is that when we are truly grateful for our life, we don't
Mm,
get to pick and choose, right? We don't get to pick and choose. I'm grateful for this, but I'm not grateful for that. Like, we have to be grateful for our whole life. But what's amazing about it is what we're grateful for, and the is happens because of all of the things that we think we're not grateful for. Number one. Number two, the things that happen in our life that we don't choose. And I'm not taking responsibility. I did not make this up, but it so
uh-huh.
resonates with me and what we're talking about. But the things that we think we're not grateful for allows us to understand what other people are going through and
Mm.
have compassion and to put ourselves and relate more to other people by having these things in our life that, were more difficult or that we've overcome. But the things that are happening, they're happening, if whether we like them or not, they're happening for us, not to us.
Yes. Yes. So true. So true. Right. Because a lot of times we can think, oh, these things are going and they're happening to us and I'm a victim and I can't believe this. And,
Yes.
going into that negative downward spiral, if you will, rather than thinking that things happen for us. Right.
Yeah.
That is a whole different perspective and a whole different mind shift when you start thinking of things, events, situations are happening for us to help us, to mold us. And many times those are like our superpowers. Those become our superpowers, right? Like what you've gone through. I mean, it's amazing, powerful story, and you went through so much trauma. However, now it's like that is what you're using to help other people. That is what you're using to talk about radical resiliency.
Yes.
And not to say like if you hadn't gone through that experience, you may not be talking about this, but it's the story and what you've gone through is so incredible. I mean, it just makes me cry when I think about it, that you're now able to help people that are going through challenging situations and events because you truly understand what they've gone through.
100%. You're going to make me cry. But
it's so powerful. It's so powerful. This work is so incredibly powerful.
It really is. And the 5 and everything that's happened in the past is you live life differently, and what the coolest part is and the most exciting part that I've been given the gift because of you, Suzanne, is to be able to actually train your brain, right? Like to look for it all the time. I mean, since March, I've been in another situation that I was faced with death again. And when you get in that mindset where literally, instead of walking back and forth where in my home and being like, why is this happening to, and again, I was there in that moment. But to be able to switch to the other side of the brain and and see the positivity, it gets you to the other side, because I kept walking back and forth literally because I couldn't leave my house and asking myself, okay, what is the lesson? What is the lesson here? What are you trying to teach me? Please. But it forces you, and it forced me to like not give up and know that there's something on the other side of this, right? I've got to get through this. And it makes you, this sounds so like crazy, and maybe this happened because of my brain injury, but you actually get excited about getting through it because you know that there's gifts and opportunities on the other side. You don't know what it is, and you can't even imagine that there's something positive. But when you're able to train your brain, which we know is possible, to switch over to the positive side, what we call the sage brain, and know that there's gifts and opportunities, it really makes the process, it makes the process a whole lot easier, even though
and we're going to find out more as how do we switch to that sage brain, as we call it, and know more about the 4 and 5th tips of radical resiliency after this commercial break.
Hi, this is Ken D. Foster, the host of the Voices of Courage show. Join us live on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, where we help you see the unseeable, know the unknowable, and do the impossible on E360 TV.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Suzanne Sabilla on Pivot Now, and we're back with Rachel Rose talking about radical resiliency. She's going to give us the last tips of how to be radically resilient and how to have that sage brain. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I think the biggest lesson, and it came about again in this second situation most recently, is for me and for so many I know of your listeners, and probably for you too, Suzanne, is asking for help. And I think that's something that so many of us it's so easy for us to give and do and be for others, but it's not for ourselves. So asking for help, when I found this doctor that promised me he was going to save me and give me my life back, the one caveat was that he was over an hour away from where I lived and I couldn't drive. And Uber, for 18 months every day, it was 6 days a week, was not an option. And I really didn't have anybody else in my life other than my dad. And my dad at the time was at the time in his early 80s.
Oh, wow.
And I had prided myself my whole life on being self-reliant and not needing anyone's help, and whatever we do to ourselves when we build that judge, right? Like, I don't need anyone, I got this. And I had to ask my father, and Suzanne, every day going to the end of the driveway to get in his car, I was like nauseous. I was so embarrassed and felt like I was obligating him and didn't know if he was going to be resentful or if he was going to feel like, I was going to feel like I owed him. And it was the worst possible feeling. And again, I was judging in every way what was happening. And it wasn't even a week that he looked at me in the car through tears and he said, I want you to know that you have given me the biggest gift. I have been in the worst possible place in my entire life, and you've given me a reason to get out of bed. You've given me purpose. You've given me an opportunity to support and make a difference. And I will tell you that it was life-changing, that moment, for both of us, because when we bear our struggles, and this again is in hindsight, when we bear our struggles and we allow others to help us, that is a gift that we're giving to them. That is an opportunity for them to feel empowered and confident and make a difference and contribute. A lot of times we're so quick to being like, no, it's okay, I got this, whether we do or we don't. And in the second opportunity for me to apply the radical resilience to my life, I got to give this same gift to my mom. And we recorded it because it was so impactful to her in her life right now. So I can't encourage everyone to give that gift. You're actually, you feel like you're imposing by accepting, actually taking it away from somebody else. And even in our goals and seeking a mentor, seeking a coach, working with a community and mastermind. And, there's a great story did you ever read the book, Think and Grow Rich?
Yes. Yes.
And in one of the chapters, it talks about Henry Ford And they keep asking him all these questions to try to discredit him when he's on the stand in court. And he says finally, I don't know why you're trying to, make it like I don't know enough. He said, because whatever questions you're asking me, if I don't know, I know someone who does, right?
Yes, yes.
We're all meant to, we all have our own gifts, and together, and that is the biggest lesson that's come out of all of this.
I think that is so, so true and so beneficial, right? I think to have a mentor or a coach, be in a mastermind, be in a community of others that are wanting to do the same kind of thing that you're doing. Like I always tell that to my clients, if you ever want to fast track your career, or if you ever want to fast track your business, find someone who is already doing the kind of thing that you want to do, right? And that could be health-wise too. If you see someone that has, a really healthy, physically fit body, have them as your mentor, right? Have them as your coach.
100%.
Find out what they're doing because they're successful at it. So success, breeds clues. And so talk with them about that. Find out about it. Get into, like you said, mastermind groups, network with other people, because that is so important and it's so valuable in terms of your own life or if you have a business. So I love that you talked about radical resiliency. You also talked about having the sage influence. And I know we were in the same group where we talked about positive intelligence. So tell us a little bit more about that. How do you get to that, what we call sage influence, and what is a sage influence?
Okay, well, this was literally Suzanne. I mean, I don't watch TV. I'm kind of a nerd. I read. And once I saw your show, I actually binge watched your show, just so you know.
Oh, really? That's great to hear.
So I've never done that before. So that's a huge, I mean, if you want to learn.
So that's a tip to everyone watching, right? You got to watch watch the show. Thank you. That's a fire one. That's a fire.
I really did.
Fire and hearts for that one.
She did not pay me to say that.
Yeah.
But this is what was amazing was that you introduced me to this program that we locked arms. And again, this was asking for help, right? And we got to do this together. And it was amazing because it was the 5 steps to radical resiliency, but it was neuroscience based. It was from Stanford. It was researched through Harvard. So this was just exploded every single thing that, I could say, oh, I have rose-colored glasses, or I see the positive in everything all day long. But that doesn't necessarily make a pessimist able to see the same thing as I see, right? It's like the story of that. I know you like Anthony Robbins, and, the story of the shoe salesman that goes down to South America and the next day he has a huge shipment of shoes coming, and he looks around and nobody's wearing shoes, and he calls and he says, cancel the shipment. There's no opportunity here. No one is wearing shoes. And then the next day they send the second salesman down and he says, quadruple the shipment. Nobody is wearing shoes. It's nothing but opportunity, right?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what the positive intelligence is. And basically, when we're growing up and we need to protect ourselves, we all have a judge, right? I think every single person knows that they have a judge. And I don't know if it's okay to say this on TV, but I call mine my itty bitty shitty committee because I have like a lot of judges.
I like that, actually.
I have a whole committee. But what happens is we create them in our childhood to protect us. And as we get older, those are the stories we keep telling ourselves that no longer serve us us anymore, serve us. And I'm sure if we name them, people will be able to understand easier that maybe you have a pleaser, or, an overachiever, which you share in your introduction. Or no, I actually was in one of your shows. And, we have all these things that we do that we think, that we tell ourselves over and over. And that is our saboteurs. Those are everything that stands in our way, right?
Yes.
Fear-based. All of our judges and our saboteurs, and there's 10 of them, and we all have a little bit or a lot of them. But those are all based in fear. And that's the left side of the brain. And when we can stimulate, and that's too much to go into today, but when we can activate, when our judge shows up and says, Rachel, what are you thinking? What are you doing? That looks terrible. That sounds dumb. When we can identify that, okay, this isn't truth. This is one of our little committees.
Right.
And switch to the right side of the brain, what we call the sage brain, where, like in Radical Resiliency, you see gifts and opportunities. You see the positive. And again, not always right away, but you know that there are gifts going through whatever you're going through. But what's amazing about the positive intelligence and switching to that side of the brain is it's not in hindsight. It's while you're going through it. It's actually, alerting you to acknowledge, okay, judge, I was expecting to get in the back seat because I'm in control right now. And what are the gifts? And, just the 3 steps that I think are so amazing is to be able to, have the gift. So you're in a situation that's not good. And instead of you telling yourselves, oh boy, this is bad, this is going to, inspire other bad things, your sage is based in love. So you're in the situation, within 10 seconds, you can flip to the sage. And now you're in the same situation thinking, okay, this is not good, but how can this benefit me a year from now? What can I learn in this situation that the stocks are down, or I'm losing my business, or my babysitter's leaving, or my husband's leaving, or, to whatever extent I'm leaving. What can I learn from what's happening now? And then taking it to the next place in your brain. And this is active, this is coming from the positive, and the gift of power, where now you're thinking, okay, imagine whatever the situation or circumstance is a weight at the gym. And now you're going to use this situation and you're going to get stronger, right? Like in Radical Resilience, you're going to get to that point of, the new person, the reflection. And now in the 3rd step of the sage brain, now you are the different person, right? Now you're the resilient person that's reflecting upon what you've been through. And now you are taking an inspired action. Maybe you even now have found your purpose because of what you've been through. You're doing things differently than you would have done. So it's like, the quote by, I can't think, I'm trying to think of who says that you can't solve a problem that, with the same brain that it was created, right?
Right. So true. So true. So true. Yeah. And I love this about, the sage brain. So we could go to the saboteurs, which is based in fear, right? Or we could also channel that energy towards more love and what we call the sage brain, which is really more of empathy, compassion, looking at gifts and opportunities in any event, right? Or situation. And I love how, because we know that the individual who talks about this, Shirzad, right, who talks about positive intelligence, and he gives the whole story of like Michael J. Fox, for example, who found out that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's at age 30. That was devastating. I mean, he didn't go right into like sage mode. Oh, this is great. I'm doing, no, I mean, that was very difficult for him. It was very traumatic. However, along the way, he saw that as an opportunity and a gift to give to other people. He ended up building a whole research foundation to research Parkinson's. And now it's an amazing global foundation that he has done or created. He might not have created that if he didn't have Parkinson's, right? And so this is the gift that and the opportunity. So I love that you talk about that as well. So I'm just looking at our show. I want to know, where can we find you, and how can we connect with you?
Okay, thank you. It's my website is just under construction, but it's rachelroselive.com. And I would love and invite to share a gift of blueprint to reclaim your power and your positivity and see all the possibilities, excuse me. And that is a gift on the website. And you can also just literally type in www.callwithrachelrose.com. And I would love to, take 15 minutes and see how I can serve you and support you and take you to the next level. And we have some events coming up. And if you do one or the other, we'll be able to share. We have a live event happening in the next week. We don't have an exact time and day yet, but that's going to be the pain of perfection. So,
Wow, that sounds good. That sounds really good.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah.
Quieting the judge.
Sounds great. And we'll have all your social media channels, accounts, after the show too, in terms of the recording, so people can see that. They can watch the show again and get all the tips and about radical resiliency. So we really appreciate you being here, Rachel. It's
so great.
Fabulous. Love you so much. And thank you so much. You've been a gift to us and our audience. And thank you for being a part of our show, watching our show. So we're here every Tuesday, 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Live life abundantly. Pivot now.
Change and shift your energy. Pivot